Oops, that's when I'm supposed to put myself on the screen because that's how it works. Good morning, everybody. How are you? It is Friday. Nikki is working in the big city. And so here we are together again, hanging out and holding down the fort. The weirdest thought just popped into my head. I know. Bear with me for just a minute. How is John Rothmann like breast milk? Maybe that was better left in my head. I don't know. How? Well, breast milk, remember this, you don't want to waste a single drop, right? I don't want to waste a single moment of precious time with John Rothmann. It didn't work as well as I thought it would. John Rothmann, everybody. Hi.
Hi. I guess you were trying to milk it for everything you could get.
Thank you. They used to call it, they probably still do call it liquid gold. You work so hard to get that breast milk that you don't want to waste a single drop. But that's how I feel, because I don't think I'm supposed to bring you on for a few more minutes, but you're here and I don't want to waste any time because I have so many things to talk to you about. I know that yesterday we had this man on the show who had completely different opinions from you. And a lot of people in the chat were feeling upset about it. Some people were feeling like, okay, this is great to hear another opinion. What does it take to have an open mind and to consider everything? Other people were like, you know what, I can't even listen. So it's very passionate, this issue of what should become of Israel, what should become of Gaza, and all the violence there. So I'll give you a moment if you want to respond. If you don't care to
I'm happy to
response, it's fine.
I'm happy to talk about it. First of all, Amir Zar is violently anti-Israel. He has supported terrorism. He has called for the destruction of Israel. His quotes are readily available on Canary Mission, which is a website. Actually, one of our listeners emailed me about it and sent me a whole bunch of stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm not opposed to any position being aired. I believe in discussion, free, frank, and open. But I also believe you have to know what the source is and what the previous positions have been to put it into context. The minute somebody proposes a one-state solution, what they are really doing is proposing the end of Israel. And if you are willing to accede to the idea that Israel should not exist as a state, then you can embrace that notion. But please note, he has supported boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel. He's condemned Zionism. So his credibility is not much. I will tell you a quick story. I used to run all of secondary Jewish education in Los Angeles many years ago. And Alfred Lilienthal, a cousin of mine, was a virulent anti-Zionist. And he wrote an article in Reader's Digest in 1949 called "Israel's Flag is Not Mine." In putting together the learning activity packet for the students, I insisted that that be included. Not because I believed that Alfred was right, but because I believed it was important to understand his point of view. So once you understand what the point of view is, you can accept or dismiss what someone says. But let me assure you, I believe in full, free, fair debate and discussion. And those of you who have listened to me over the years know I have permitted all points of view on my program because I believe that is the way you learn. Somebody asked me, why do you bother listening to people who you disagree with? Mm-hmm. And the answer is, that's how I know that I disagree with them. If I didn't listen to them, and if I couldn't argue with them, then what would it mean? But for Israel, it is a matter of life and death, of their survival as a nation. There's only one nation in the world in which there is an advocacy for the destruction of that nation, and that is Israel. And so, to put this to rest, I can assure you, no matter what anybody says, the Israelis will not surrender their existence. And that's the simple fact.
So Eric Wertheimer writes this morning, and I respect your opinion, Eric, and I'm glad you're here, that there should be shame on Nikki for allowing Amr to spew lies. And we do have a responsibility on whatever platform we exist, whether that's a KGO radio or whether it's a podcast that is audio only, or whether it's video here on YouTube or wherever platform we end up on. I believe we have a responsibility to be truthful and kind and honest and forthcoming about everything. But I don't think, Eric, that it means that we need to limit the information. We can we can put it, as John just said, basically in context. And that's why I think it's important to ask John about what he feels about it as well, so that we are getting a little bit more information about everything. I just, I don't think, I don't agree with with you trying to shame her for having a different viewpoint on just because you don't agree with the viewpoint. I don't.
No, listen, I have people on with whom I've disagreed for years.
Mhm.
And the reason I do that is because people have a right to hear it. I have to argue back. I
Right.
think the main criticism that I got in the many emails I received about this and Facebook responses was, why wasn't Nikki better informed? Why didn't she know what her guests' position were? Why didn't she try to nail those positions? And that's something that I believe is very important for a host. You
Right.
have to know who you're interviewing, what their positions are. You have to do your homework. Somebody asked me recently, why do you talk about Donald Trump? Why do you talk about what Donald Trump says?
Right.
Because if you don't know what Donald Trump is saying, you won't understand how dangerous he is. And
Right.
yes, I did say dangerous. So that's my attitude.
But what if you don't know necessarily the positions or the history of the positions of a person, but you want to learn about it, right? If it's just a moment where you want to take the time to hear the person.
Yeah, you don't learn about it by putting them on the air without having full knowledge about who you're interviewing. Your homework is necessary. And the criticism of Nikki was that she didn't do her homework. She didn't ask the tough questions. She didn't know his position on boycott, divestment, sanctions, on Zionism, previous criticisms of Israel. I mean, this is a fundamental thing about being on the radio or being on a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know what you're doing and who you're dealing with. Look, I understand the criticism of Donald Trump. I've had people say to me on Around the Political World with John Rothmann, do not talk about Donald Trump, or don't say what he says.
Right.
Well, if I don't say what he says, an ad hominem attack doesn't work. But I will tell you, if I had been on the program with Nikki yesterday, I would have asked the tough questions. And all you have to do is go to Canary Mission, which has the whole background, and you would know how to respond. So if I have any criticism of any talk show host or any host of a podcast, it is, before you put a guest on, you better know what the hell they're talking about.
Well, and I think she knew where he was coming from, but I still don't think that's a reason not to have the guest on. And I think that she did ask some tough questions. You know, she did ask, what does this look like? Why would you do this? And we had questions from the chat that were tough as well, that were very critical of him. And I felt, one of the things I felt about him yesterday was that he started the interview from a place where he was a little defensive. Like he knew he was going to get attacked for whatever he said. So I don't know. I mean, I think I would have rather heard it than not hear it.
That's my point. Exactly. Yeah. But if you're a host and you're bringing somebody on, you have to be able to give the full picture of who the person is, what his previous positions have been, where he stands on this issue, and why there's no surprise in what he's saying. Look, when people have me on, and I'm interviewed extensively all across the country, people know my biases. They know my prejudices.
Sure.
I'm willing to stand by what I say. I don't try to modify it. I don't try to clean it up, so to speak, because I know what I believe. I think the attempt to pass over the, frankly, hateful comments that were made by the guest yesterday in a variety of contexts means you have to know about that before you interview them, and you have to let your audience know. And I don't mind that. I mean, I that's what people do with me all the time. So I have no problem with it. And by the way, that's what we do with Donald Trump. Yeah. That's what we do in trying to expose his danger to us. We don't hide it, we reveal it. So if you ask me about freedom of speech, look, the president of Harvard University resigned. Yeah. Somebody asked me, should she not have had the right to speak? I said, of course you have the right to speak, but then you have to be held accountable for what you say. Yeah. I don't know about you, but I'm held accountable for what I say because of the fact that I'm doing what I do.
Right.
I don't mind.
Yeah.
But I also believe in honesty and integrity. And if you're going to have a guest who spews the kind of anti-Israel, anti-Zionist, frankly, hateful kind of comments, that needs to be exposed too. When I had Alfred Lilienthal on my program on KGO, I explained to him, to the audience, he's an anti-Zionist. He believes that Israel should not have been born and should not have a right to exist. Now go after him. And that's exactly what happened.
Randy says, I'd like to know if John Rothmann agrees with any of Amar's points from yesterday about is the Israeli thumb being pressed too hard on the Palestinians.
The simple fact is there is a war going on. When there's a war, there are going to be pressures. And there's no doubt Israel didn't start this war with Hamas. Hamas started the war. There was essentially a ceasefire. Hamas not only started the war, but used civilians as shields. I don't know how you fight a pleasant war. I don't know how you do that. Maybe in a cold war, which we had with the Soviet Union for so many years, but in a hot war, frankly, all bets are off. And I don't know about you, but I listened on CNN to people who were hostages and who were released.
Yeah.
One woman who described her twin daughters and her husband, and he's still being held hostage. I was in tears.
Yeah.
I understood the anguish and the pain. So to me, it isn't a question of not listening. You have to listen. I can present the Palestinian positions better than most Palestinian spokesmen can. I probably have a greater familiarity. And as you know, I wrote a book, Icon of Evil, Hitler's Mufti and the Rise of Radical Islam. There was criticism of the book because I explained why they believed what they believed.
Right.
I even called the Mufti, quoting others in the Palestinian world, the George Washington of the Palestinian national movement. You think I didn't get heat for that? But people have to understand what the objective is. So let me close this out by saying, if the objective is the destruction of Israel, everything else is beside the point. If you say that no matter what the Israelis do, they should not exist, the nation of Israel should be destroyed, that says it all. Everything else is simply an excuse.
Laurie said he did not say get rid of the safe homeland first Jews. He said one state with equal rights for all. And Laurie writes, when I was there in 72, Arabs had to carry identity cards different than Israelis. And she said she was appalled even then.
But that's normal. In Israel, everybody carries an identity card. Jews carry an identity card. Arabs carry an identity card. You have to know who you're dealing with. It's not one nation, if you will. It is two separate peoples, and they're trying to find a modus vivendi. And I think that's what we have to work on. The idea of a free, independent Zionist state cannot be disputed. And what the guest did yesterday, no matter what language was used, that's been what he has advocated for years and years and years. And we better understand that. You can mask a wolf in sheep's clothing, but it's still a wolf.
All right. Well, enough said about that. I wanted to get your opinion. I know it's a little heavy for the first thing in the morning. So let's lighten it up with some Trump, why don't we?
Oh, you want to lighten it up with Trump? I can't wait. Let's Trump forth on this.
You know what happens when someone allows him to start texting on social media in the middle of the night? It is never pretty. And I don't know if it was last night or the night before, he does this all caps message on his social media platform. And here's what he wrote. Even events that cross the line must fall under total immunity, or it will be years of trauma trying to determine good from bad. So it's almost like he's acknowledging that what he did crossed the line in this whole thing. And I'm sure his lawyers took one look at that post and they're like, oh, not again. Here we go. I don't know.
Well, look, to me, it's very clear. No one is above the law. The president of the United States is not above the law. My old boss, Richard Nixon, was not above the law. If you had applied the standard that Donald Trump wants applied, Richard Nixon would have finished a term with no disgrace, and we wouldn't have known a thing.
Yeah.
Look, just like I said about the last subject we covered, I believe in full disclosure. Let me explain to you that when Donald Trump goes after Nikki Haley and implies that she is not a U.S. citizen, or that because her parents are immigrants, she is less than, that's appalling.
Yeah.
I don't care whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, right, left, center. I don't care what you are. Nikki Haley was born in South Carolina. She's been governor of the state. She was ambassador to the United Nations. Of course she's an American citizen. Of course she's qualified to run for president. And what really bothers me is that the leadership of the Republican Party is not leaping to Nikki Haley's defense. But look, let's be honest. The historical precedent is clear. A candidate for the Republican nomination who wins in Iowa and then wins in New Hampshire, those two situations, has inevitably been the presidential nominee of the Republican Party. I believe that we will see on Tuesday in New Hampshire a victory by Donald Trump. All my contacts in New Hampshire, I've been on the phone with the people in New Hampshire, friends of mine who I trust, tell me Trump is going to win. And that means that Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee for president of the United States. The only thing that prevents Donald Trump from being the nominee of the Republican Party would be if the court takes him off the ballot. I'm opposed to the court taking him off the ballot.
They did in Washington State. They kept him on in Washington State. Yep. The judge did yesterday.
And they should.
Yeah.
I don't think it is the place of the court to remove somebody from the ballot. Now, on the other hand, if Donald Trump is convicted in a court of law of insurrection, well, that raises the whole question then, which should go to the Supreme Court, dealing with the question of whether or not somebody who's an insurrectionist should be able to run for president. But frankly, the best way to cure an infection is to confront it. And just as we described with the previous topic, I want these things exposed. I want people to understand. But can you imagine, and I would never vote for Nikki Haley. I disagree with her on so many issues I can't even begin to tell you. But to say she isn't eligible to run for president, it's the same thing as when Donald Trump said Barack Obama wasn't born in the United States. Yeah. He was born in Kenya. And you remember before the election, Donald Trump had to go on the air and say, oh, he was born in the United States. That in 2016.
It's ridiculous.
This is shameful. And when people are allowed to get away with these kinds of accusations or these kinds of innuendos, there ought to be a swift response. There is no doubt in New Hampshire that in the next 4 days, and it's only 4 days till Tuesday, we are going to see these attacks on Nikki Haley escalate. Now, let me take it one step further and tell you that if Donald Trump next week, when you interview me or Nikki is here and we go through this process again, he may have an iron lock on the nomination for the presidency. What happens if he's convicted in various courts? What happens if these charges that have been made in 4 different jurisdictions, 91 charges, if any of them are true, should that disqualify him? So I had a conversation last night with a very old friend of mine. Haven't talked to him in a few years, but he called me and we had a long talk. He is a diehard Trump supporter. He explained to me that January 9th is not the way it is being depicted. It was a peaceful protest. Yeah. He went on to suggest to me that Donald Trump is not an insurrection. That Donald Trump,
clearly he hasn't seen the January 6th video, right? Whoa.
No, but you see, no, don't confuse people with the facts. Yeah. If people have a fixed notion, no matter what the facts are, they're going to stick with it. And the problem the Republican Party will have, if in fact Donald Trump is their nominee, they're going to be battling this all the way until November. Now, let me go one step further. It has to do with states' rights. Last night, Nikki Haley stood on the stage at a CNN broadcast, a town hall meeting, and said she believes in states' rights. I want you to consider something very carefully. When the Supreme Court ruled on Brown versus the Board of Education, a document was issued by a substantial number of members of Congress from the South. It's called the Southern Manifesto. Anybody can Google it. The whole point of the Southern Manifesto was to say clearly, precisely, unambiguously, that it should be a states' rights issue, that every state should decide for itself whether or not it is going to abide by any issue of the Supreme Court. You do that, and we're right back where we were with Dred Scott. Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons we fought a civil war. I believe in states' rights to a degree, but there are certain issues that override all others. This question of a woman's right to choose is going to be central, because let me tell you, whatever the Supreme Court does, and I really believe this with all my heart, if they uphold Trump's position, half the country will be furious. If they don't uphold Trump's position, the other half of the country will be furious as well. Yep. And so the Supreme Court, although nobody's really talking about it, will be a central issue in the 2024 campaign.
I disagree with half the country, because I think more people support a woman's right to choose than don't.
Yeah, you're right. But whose say matters? Is it the state laws Let me ask you, Kim, I ask you a personal question. Did you know you were pregnant in the first 6 weeks of your pregnancy?
I did, but that's because I went about getting pregnant a different way. So I
Okay.
knew very early on, but most people don't.
Most people don't.
Mhm.
And what these Republican leaders are now proposing is a method which would have precluded a woman finding out at 7 or 8 or 9 weeks that she's
Mhm.
pregnant from having the ability to terminate the pregnancy. I think that's wrong. I believe very strongly that a woman should control her own body. And I want to make it clear, if anybody tried to tell me what to do with my body, I'd tell them to take a flying leap, pure and simple.
Yeah. Let's roll back for a minute to something that you mentioned, which is this whole birther thing.
Yeah.
And I find this to be incredibly um, uh, full of hypocrisy, because here's what Donald Trump thinks. He says he doesn't think that she's qualified to run for president because while both of Haley's parents became citizens after her birth, when she was born in, as you say, South Carolina, her parents were not citizens, so she was not born to American citizens.
Doesn't matter. 14th Amendment is
That's
very
right.
clear. If you're born in the United States of America, you are a citizen of the United States of America. Now,
That's right.
I want you to understand how much Donald Trump disregards the Constitution. He would like that changed.
Yeah.
And when somebody said that to me recently, I said, well, if he wants it changed, let him amend the Constitution. Let him move to amend the Constitution. And of course, he won't do it. But can you imagine? Well, I don't care whether you agree or disagree with.
Here's the part of that makes this full of hypocrisy. Trump had a parent who was also born outside of the United States. That was his mother, who was from Scotland. So was he not eligible then because one of his parents wasn't born here either?
It's a silly argument. Does everybody understand the law? Yeah. If you are born in the United States of America, you are a citizen of the United States. When Samuel was born in 1992, the birth took place at Children's Hospital here in San Francisco. There were a very large number of people who came from China, pregnant women, who from Hong Kong, I should say, in those days, Hong Kong, came from Hong Kong because they knew China was going to take over Hong Kong. There was an agreement that would happen. They came here to give birth to their children so that their children would be American citizens.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, gee, how did that happen? The answer is the Constitution says it, pure and simple. And if you're interested in preserving your children, you'll do anything. And that leads me to the immigration issue. We understand that most of the people who come here are coming here because they want to ensure their children have a future. Right. If you have a daughter and you live in Central America, you want to get her out of that situation before you know it, she'll be in the slave trade. If you have a boy, you want to get him out of there because he could, or she, we can say this applies both, could be taken over by the cartels. And so I understand the determination. Why do you think so many Chinese citizens are fleeing China, coming to Ecuador, and then going to the United States of America? And they're getting here because they want their children to be free. Oh, they want to be free too. But we all think about what comes after us. Mm-hmm. And one of the problems in the world today is this tremendous instability. You understand, we are going to have massive numbers of refugees because of climate change. People are not going to be able to live where they live now. And what are we going to do? How is the world going to confront the question of wars, if you will, fought over water and food and land? And may I point out to you that the issue of climate change is barely addressed in this presidential campaign. Nikki Haley at least had the courage to address it, although I thought inadequately. But when I look at the long-term problems, all I can say, Kim, is I hope you and I are still sitting here in 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years to see where the world is, because it's very disturbing to see the trends that are taking place. And one other quick comment, sometimes problems are not solvable. And I want to just say, I think that may apply to climate change. And if you listen to President Biden this morning, talking about the bombing we are doing now of the Houthis in Yemen, the question becomes, and he was asked, is it working? And he said, well, we're doing it, but it's not working. And he's going to keep right on doing it because he doesn't have a choice. Mm-hmm. And that is the ultimate tragedy. we keep doing things that, frankly, we have no control over, but we seem to have no choice about. And so when it comes to the border issue, and that's going to be a major issue in the campaign of 2024, and Donald Trump saying he's going to build a wall and make Mexico pay for it isn't going to solve the problem. You know it, and I know it. But one of the things I learned many years ago from one of my political heroes is Wendell Willkie, and he was giving testimony before Congress in 1941, and he had said he would never go to war and so forth and so on. And with war approaching, one of the members of Congress asked him a question, and he said, that was just campaign rhetoric. And I think there is a key here that we have to differentiate over what is campaign rhetoric and what are substantive issues. And I can win a rhetorical argument. I know I can do that because I'm trained to win rhetorical arguments. But that doesn't solve the problem. So that's my thought on that.
Speaking of solving problems, you would think that anybody who loves America would want the problems facing us to be fixed. If you felt the border was unsafe or not secure, you would want that to be fixed as fast as possible, right? But Donald Trump, apparently, now we understand, from Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, does not want that because it's an election year and he doesn't want President Biden to get credit for fixing anything. And so Mike Johnson goes on Fox News and talks to Laura Ingraham and says he's been in contact with Trump, who doesn't want any of the border negotiations or anything to be passed or put into place, that he's basically telling him, fight all of it. Don't accept any of it. We also know that Donald Trump publicly said he didn't want the economy to succeed, right? Under Biden, he wants the economy to do poorly. How can a candidate that truly loves America wish for a bad economy and no border deal?
Well, it tells you what kind of person that Donald Trump is. By the way, if we had hours and we could talk about previous presidential campaigns, I could draw other analogies. But we have never had a candidate for president of the United States so blatantly show disregard for the people and the law of the United States of America. And that's what's incredible. Look, yesterday when I had this conversation with my buddy about, and I haven't seen him in a few years, but we had about a 45-minute discussion about this, he didn't care because Donald Trump represents to him a position in the world which will make all of us more secure. I suggest to you that Donald Trump makes us all more insecure. And look, Nikki and you and Mark Thompson and everybody who's dealing with this issue, I am tired of dealing with Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you something. Until Donald Trump is finally, firmly, and completely eliminated from the presidential contest or is defeated decisively in November, we have to deal with him. To ignore him would be a disaster. And then will come the real challenge. And I don't know if it'll be as sexy or as interesting or as dynamic a discussion, but it's how does the Republican Party rebuild itself? We're not going to have a third party in this country. And by the way, you heard the very interesting suggestion made by those who advocate a third party, that when Nikki Haley loses, she should run as the third party candidate for president. And of course, Nikki Haley dismissed it. And I dismiss it too, because we have an existing party that can be restored to sanity. There have been battles in the Republican Party between the liberal and conservative wings over many generations. But let me assure you, what the Republican Party has to confront is the issue of Donald Trump. If you take Donald Trump out of the equation, the Republican Party can rebuild. As long as Donald Trump is in the equation, Republicans are afraid that if they alienate Donald Trump's base, the MAGA Republicans, they cannot win an election. And that's absolutely true. So
Republicans can't even say what they really feel for fear of being somehow offending a Trumper, right?
Of the Trump electorate.
Yeah.
If you consider the fact that Republicans have bought into the fact overwhelmingly that Joe Biden did not win the presidential election legitimately, when you see the numbers in the polls saying that many Republicans believe that Donald Trump really won the election of 2020, when you consider all of these things, which are myths, which aren't true, but you know what? It's very interesting. My old professor, Harry Nairhood of blessed memory, told us the first day in class, remember this quote. If you don't remember it, you won't pass the class. I have remembered this quote ever since. It remains engraved upon my mind and heart. It's not what is that really counts. It's what man thinks is. And the Trump people are not concerned with the facts. They are concerned with what he wants them to believe, and they believe it. And isn't that the saddest thing of all? Look, I was a radio talk show host for almost 3 decades, and I know that hundreds of thousands, millions of people listen to me. And if they agreed with me on everything, it would have been a very dull show. Right. What made it interesting was when people disagreed, when they articulated their point of view, and when I tried to answer. And somebody could agree with me or disagree with me, but I always was viewed as being respectful of allowing different points of view. I believe the problem with Donald Trump is he is an intolerant man. He doesn't want to hear any dissenting voice, and he believes he's always right. Well, I want to say this clearly, and I hope my wife is not listening. I am not always right. And I'm happy to admit.
Let the record show that he said it at 9:37 a.m. on Friday, January 19th. Let's move to the legal stuff. Did you see this story about Fani Willis? She is the prosecutor, right, in Georgia, who's overseeing this racketeering case that has Donald Trump charged and his allies charged with trying to overturn the 2020 election results in the state of Georgia. Well, it's pointed out somehow, I think a Trumpy thing happened, where the allegations have been made that she's having a relationship of physical nature with one of the district attorneys, I believe, or
who she hired, and the accusation is made that together they conspired. He's making more money than anybody else to take vacations together and all that stuff. Look, it may be true. I don't know, but I'll tell you what I do know. I want to know whether Donald Trump was involved in trying to overturn the election in Georgia. And so Fani Willis is simply the district attorney who is dealing with this issue. But let's assume she did have an affair. I don't know whether that affects her one way or the other, but let's assume that she had the affair. I want to know the substance of the charges. Are they true? And I'm talking about the charges against Donald Trump. And let me tell you, there is no doubt in my mind that they're true. We have played. You have played. Mark has played. Nikki has played. I have played.
I just need to find 11,780 votes. Yep.
Isn't it amazing? This remains fixed. But I want you to know what I was told the other day. Oh, no, John, that's AI. It was fake.
Oh, no. Really?
And, oh, yes. And we're going to hear more and more of that.
Please. But the judge overseeing the case has required Fani Willis now to respond to these allegations of this improper romantic relationship with one of her prosecutors. He wants her to respond in writing to this. And I don't know if that is kind of just giving it more fuel to become something or not.
No, listen, actually, I don't think it plays a role in this case, but it does have a role to play in whether or not she is handling her office in a proper way.
Right.
And that if it were pursued on that basis. But if every person who had an affair with a co-worker were prosecuted, I have a feeling our jails would be filled. And of course, I'm not speaking about you or me or Nikki or Mark or anybody else, but that's simply part of the reality of life. But here's the question. The bottom line is, did Donald Trump try to subvert the election in Georgia? Yes or no?
Yeah. Anything else is a distraction.
And that's what Donald Trump does.
Yeah.
He's a constant distraction.
Right. Speaking of a distraction, and since we're on the legal cases, this whole E. Jean Carroll damages portion of this lawsuit is wild, with the judge coming out and having to admonish Trump in court, and Trump actually giving him lip back. I mean, this is a judge that can throw you in contempt of court, and it seems like a belligerent Donald Trump in court has no concern that this is even going to be a problem for him.
My podcast yesterday was titled Contempt. Donald Trump holds the American legal system in contempt if they work against him.
Right.
It's shameful. Can you imagine sitting in a courtroom and doing what Donald Trump did?
Never.
And they're going to throw the book at him. He'll appeal. I mean, he has every right to appeal.
Yeah.
But the simple fact is, that he's already been judged by the judge guilty.
Yeah.
This is simply an argument over how much he owes for what he did.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope they nail him on it, because it's wrong and you should be protected from defamation. And it did cause Carroll a tremendous amount of money, I'm sure. And this is not pleasant. Remember, she's 80 years old now.
He's still defaming her.
Of course.
At every turn.
Yeah. So I expect the judgment will be harsh. Donald Trump will cry that he's been framed and it's not true and it's a witch hunt and all the rest.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there is substance to it. After all, I was criticized the other day on the Mark Thompson show. I think you were the one who did it, because I mentioned a videotape that used the P word, and I actually articulated.
Oh no, I thought that was hilarious. My whole point on that was, in the 2 decades that we have worked together or more, never once, off the air or on, have I heard you utter a curse word or anything coarse in nature until that moment. And so it wasn't that it was a big deal in general. It's just a big deal coming from you. That's all I'm saying.
Well, what shocks me is when I use the term P word, somebody said, "What are you talking about?" And then I have to explain it. Well, that's why I decided to shortcut the explanation and actually use the P word. Let me be clear about this. That tape is going to be introduced into the courtroom.
Yeah.
And Donald Trump has to be accountable for something. You know what amazes me? The people who tell me Donald Trump hasn't done anything wrong. They're just out to get him. And all I can say is, if you believe that, I have a bridge I'd like to sell you here in San Francisco, made out of gold, solid gold, and I'll give it to you cheap.
I mean, I don't understand how you can have the evidence, right? You can have someone that has a history of saying he doesn't need consent to grab a woman's lady bits, right? He just goes and does it. That how you could then not extrapolate that he wouldn't really feel like he needed consent to do anything else to someone. And
that's the reason why I think they're going to nail Donald Trump on this thing. And the judge, who, by the way, has a splendid reputation, he's not a left-wing judge or a right-wing judge. He's a judge.
Yeah.
And when he said to Donald Trump, "Excuse me, this is my courtroom," I was so impressed. This is something that the Trump people have to deal with. The interesting thing, and I really mean this very respectfully, Kim, is the people who support Donald Trump will not move from their position, no matter what he does.
Mm-hmm. No. I want to play this video for you, and it might be a little bit long, but I was very surprised, because you would think that a presidential candidate would welcome votes from anywhere, right? I'm a Republican, but a Democrat wants to vote for me. Come on board. I'll take whoever. I'll take all the votes, right? Shouldn't she be stumping for every single vote?
Darn right.
But she has a hard time saying, yeah, I want Democrats to vote for me. Take a listen to this.
From some rather wealthy Democrat support. And many of us are anticipating that next Tuesday, you're going to perform very well here in New Hampshire. However, some of that may be fueled by Democratic voters who are participating in our primary. My question for you is, how does that help or hurt us, especially if these voters revert back to party lines?
Well, first of all, I will tell you, we've been here for 11 months. We've had over 75, 80 town halls, answering every question, shaking every hand. I'm the last person to leave. I don't ask people when they come in the door if they're Republican, Democrat, or Independent. What we do is find out, I go and tell them what I think we need to do with our country, the direction we need to go, and how we go about that. I know that we have General Don Bolduc's support. He's been a pro-Trumper for a long time. He's a hardcore conservative. He's with us. I know we have Governor Chris Sununu. He's a moderate Republican. We have him with us. I know that we've had some independents come our way. And yes, we've had some Democrats say they want to support us because they're not happy with Joe Biden. What I want everybody here to remember is Republicans have lost the last 7 out of 8 popular votes for president. That is nothing to be proud of. We should want to win the majority of Americans. The problem is, if you're going to win the majority of Americans, you have to make sure as a leader, you don't decide who's good and who's bad, who's right and who's wrong. You bring out the best of people and get them to move forward. What I am doing is telling people what I'm for. If independents and conservative and moderate Republicans like that, I love that. If conservative Democrats are saying, I want to come back home to the Republican Party because they left it, I want them back. We're not trying to target progressives. They're never going to be for me. I know that we have differences, but what I will do is I want the younger voter. I want those moderates. I want those independents. I want them to come back home to the Republican Party because that's how we win. And that is why if you look at any general election poll, Trump and Biden are even. On a good day, Trump will be up by 2 points. I defeat Biden by 17 points in the Wall Street Journal poll. When you do that, that's a double-digit win that takes you into D.C. That's a mandate to get the wasteful spending under control and get our economy back on track. That's a mandate to get our kids reading again and go back to the basics on education. That's a mandate to secure our border with no more excuses. That's a mandate for law and order back in our country, and that's a mandate for a strong America we can be proud of. And so let's remember, it's the problem I've had with the Republican Party. They want to push people out of the party. I want to bring people into the party because at the end of the day, we have to heal and unify as Americans. If we are going to go and get this country out of disarray, and if we're going to make sure we have a strong America going forward.
All right. So, I mean, I wonder if you like what she had to say there. I mean, she does kind of put out a message of unity, but she also, kind of cut off the beginning of the question there. She also is saying, like, if you were a Republican who became a Democrat, we'll take you back. But she doesn't say, Democrats, I welcome you. She says, listen, if you're a progressive, I know you're never going to vote for me, so forget it. How unifying is that?
She's not trying to unify. She's trying to win.
Yeah.
And remember, Richard Nixon once said to me, to win the Republican nomination, you have to go to the right if you're a Republican. For the Democrats, you got to go to the left. And he said, but the person who wins is the one who gets to the center first. And he was absolutely right. Nikki Haley is trying in New Hampshire to gain as much traction as she can. 40% of the voters in New Hampshire, maybe it's a few percentage points higher, are independents. They can choose as independents to vote in the Republican contest, or if there had been a Democratic contest, they could have voted vote in the Democratic contest. Mm-hmm. But what she's doing is saying, please vote for me. And I understand that. If you are running for the presidency of the United States of America outside of a primary, you have to appeal to the nation. Remember George McGovern's great line, "Come home, America"? The whole idea is that you want Americans to feel comfortable in voting for you. But you have a different target in a primary and a general election. And that's the simple practical politics of it.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I know it sounds kind of like a campaign ad to run, but I liked what she had to say for the most part. And then I remembered, and my husband and I had a discussion about this. Would you vote for Nikki Haley if only to keep a Trump out of the White House?
That's
right?
only a primary. That's
right.
in a primary.
Yes.
And a lot of Republicans have to deal with that. Yeah. I believe that Trump voters are solid. They are going to vote for him no matter what. They belong to a cult. Let's be clear. There's nothing that Donald Trump can say or do. You remember when Donald Trump said, I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and my supporters would still vote for me?
He's right.
He's right. And that is a sad commentary.
Yeah.
I believe that you have to judge carefully when you cast your vote.
Yeah.
I've never missed an election. I believe voting is a sacred duty. And I would never vote for a Nikki Haley for president because even if she sounds good on a particular answer, take a look at her whole record. She's also very far to the right.
Right.
And so
she's going to nominate any Supreme Court justices that will do exactly what I don't want if I care about a woman's right to choose.
Exactly.
But on the other hand, Trump will not only do that, he will also, I believe, put America, as far as our democracy and our way of life, in danger. Whereas she won't do that. Okay. So if it's a lesser, like, do I want to shoot myself in the foot and poke out my eye, or do I just want a bullet to the foot? Right.
Except remember, you're choosing a candidate. You're not choosing a president.
Yeah.
Which means that Republicans who don't want to see Trump the nominee should vote for Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis.
Yeah.
It's perfectly all right. But what we've learned is that about 11% of Republicans in Iowa said they were still going to end up voting for Joe Biden.
Mm-hmm.
If those kind of numbers persist, Joe Biden will be reelected. Now you've got to pose another question. What if Joe Biden is not the Democratic candidate for president? Then the American people will have to choose between a Donald Trump, if he is the nominee, and we presume he will be, and whoever the Democrats nominate.
Do you really feel like that's a possibility?
Anything is possible. In 1968, at this point, who would have predicted the Tet Offensive was going on, but who would have predicted that Eugene McCarthy would really challenge the president, that although he would lose the New Hampshire primary, he scored big enough that Lyndon Johnson chose to withdraw as a candidate for president on March 31st, 1968. Who would have imagined Bobby Kennedy jumping into the race and Martin Luther King being killed, Bobby Kennedy being killed, the turmoil in the streets of Chicago in 1968? You're too young to remember all of this. The only prediction I made that year that was right was that Richard Nixon was going to be elected president. So the point is, why do I love politics? Why are these discussions so interesting? Why do I get 100,000 downloads on Around the Political World with John Rothmann? Because it's unpredictable. It's the best soap opera in the world.
Yeah.
It's more fun than you can ever imagine. However, the implications are very serious, because who the next president of the United States is going to be will be determined in the end by the choices that we as voters make.
I wanted to ask you about this. Speaker Mike Johnson comes together with others to form a deal that will keep the government in business for another short-term stopgap funding measure. And the Freedom Caucus people don't want him to make this deal, and they're mad. And so now what we have is another question mark as to whether Mike Johnson gets to stay in the speaker's office.
I listened to Matt Gaetz. I listened to Matt Gaetz last night, who was one of the leaders in removing McCarthy. They're going to stick with Johnson. They don't have a choice. And frankly, when you really look at Johnson's record and you read what he has said and his election denial and his view on a woman's right to choose, he is frankly to the right of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And he's the Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
It's shocking. It's unbelievable. And yet the Republicans, who had a long line of wonderful leaders, Joe Martin, Charlie Halleck, Jerry Ford, these are people from the past, of course, in the 60s and 70s, but these were people who were responsible Republicans. I don't think Speaker Johnson is a true reflection of responsible Republicanism. And he will survive because the Freedom Caucus and the right-wingers in the Republican Party have no choice. They don't have an alternative now.
I would say maybe he's more responsible than the Freedom Caucus people who wanted a government shutdown. We're calling for a government shutdown.
He was calling for a government shutdown for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Remember that. He was calling for a government shutdown, and that government shutdown, now that he's Speaker, he cannot afford to have take effect.
Yeah, it's true. I can't believe you have an old-fashioned phone in your house that rings like that.
Yeah, and I apologize for that.
No, it's okay.
I took one line off the phone, my regular line off. I left my wife's line up and running. Next time I'll disable them both, because there is no place I would rather be than with Kim McAllister.
Well, I'm coming to the end of my John Rothmann hour, as it's turned into.
Why?
I know. It's why indeed. Why not just keep you on for the whole show? Really. But listen, you mentioned earlier a woman's right to choose and how important that will be in this upcoming election. And if people didn't know this, I wanted to throw it out there and let you know that they're still trying to attack our right to choose, our reproductive health, our right to handle our own bodies. Republican lawmakers are pushing forward. Oh, they really want to talk to you. They're pushing forward 2 anti-abortion bills. Both of them are apparently full of anti-choice misinformation. They're a pair of anti-choice bills that were approved yesterday. And this comes just one day before what's happening this weekend, which is the big March for Life rally in Washington, D.C., that despite the snowstorm that's moving in, apparently they're still going to hold this big rally.
And Speaker Johnson is the key speaker.
Yes, he is. He's the key speaker. He's very interested in making sure that women don't have the right to choose what happens to them. But they both of these bills that are being pushed. One is called the Pregnant Student Rights Act, and it gives pregnant students on college campuses certain rights. It's called Supporting Pregnant and Parenting Women and Families Act. But what it does is use federal funds toward pregnancy centers that apparently support mothers and newborns, but it's full of this anti-choice rhetoric.
It's a disgrace. It's a complete sham.
It's not what it seems to be
No,
at
it's
all.
a complete sham.
Yeah.
And the Republicans have been pulling this, and the pro-life people, so-called, have been pulling this, and it needs to be exposed for what it is, a sham.
Yeah. The second one is even more dangerous than the first one. This one is put forth by Congresswoman Michelle Fishback, who's a Republican out of Minnesota. And this one tries to block the new Biden administration rule that prohibits federal dollars from the temporary assistance from needy families toward pregnancy resource centers. Pregnancy resource centers meaning we're going to tell you how you need to do it, and we're not going to give you any other option, right?
Yep. Look, these are all deceptions. This is not honesty or integrity. And that's why the Republican Party is in the trouble it's in with women voters.
Yeah.
And that's why Speaker Johnson needs to be exposed for what he is.
But they keep don't they know that? How smart is it to put forward two bills like that in an election year?
Oh, it may be very smart because you mobilize your base.
Yeah.
What is Donald Trump doing? What are the people who are dealing with women's right to choose? They're provoking their base to stick with them. That's the key.
But if they know that more people disagree, then, maybe that's not something to highlight.
No, it doesn't matter, because if your base turns out in large numbers and there's apathy on the other side, you can still win. What happens on election day, no matter whether you're a Democrat or Republican? You turn your base out to support you. You canvass the neighborhoods where you have votes, because most people don't vote. And so in order to win an election, it's who gets to the polls, who votes that matters. Yeah. So that's a real key in all of this.
Yeah. Blue Spark says we should let you go because you may be missing out on zero interest on your credit card or a refund from PG&E.
You're absolutely right, Nick. But I do want you to know I was doing an interview. I can't remember now who it was with. Oh, I know. I was teaching my class at the Fromm Institute. And all of a sudden, just like today, the phone rings, and I can't answer it because I'm on the air. Yeah. It was telling me the KGO had decided to dissolve, that Cumulus was pulling the plug on KGO. So whenever the phone rings like this, I think to myself, what more bad news can we receive?
What do they want from me now? No.
But the good news is I have an hour with Kim McAllister.
Yeah, I loved it. Brian kicks in for $10 and says, $18 rather. Sorry, I can see. He says, John Rothmann, the kind and wise mensch, what a blessing to see and hear him 2 times a week. Such a blessing. Thank you for the contribution, Brian. And I agree. What a treat to have, to not, part of you mentioned KGO's demise, and part of that, in addition to having it be horrible for the Bay Area and not having a place for us to hear different viewpoints and to come together as a community and discuss things, for me personally, is the loss of coworkers that I love and adore. And we all go our separate ways, and then people get busy doing what they're doing and they don't talk and they don't connect. But with this platform and with you on the Mark Thompson show and here on the Nikki Medoro show once a week, I feel like I'm still connected to you. And I think the listeners and viewers probably do too. And it is quite a blessing.
Well, I'm delighted. And I want you to know, and I tell people this all the time, we don't have talk radio in San Francisco.
Yeah.
But we do have what Nikki does, what Mark does, and what you do. And so support these independent voices. Subscribe to these platforms. I don't care if you send $5 or $500. The point is, in order to keep these things going, there has to be support from our listeners.
Right.
And I want to emphasize, I don't get paid for this. I
No.
do it because I love the fact that we have some way to communicate. And one of the great blessings for me is the number of people who email me, the number of people who on LinkedIn and so forth. I can't respond to everybody. It's impossible. I'm a one-man operation. But the demand that people have for honesty and integrity and clear thinking is what impresses me.
Mhm.
So you can see at the bottom of the screen the pitch. Oh, they just took it off. There it is again.
Yeah.
Help support the show by donating to our
Yeah.
and so please do.
Yeah.
And not for any other reason than you want this kind of freedom of speech. We began with the question of freedom of speech. I
Right.
want to hear all points of view, all sides.
Yeah.
And the more people can listen and debate and discuss, the better off we are. And I hope one of these days, Kim, we will have a public meeting as we used to do the All-Stars.
Yeah.
With you and with all of our colleagues.
Yeah.
Together in one place. I'll bet we draw a crowd of 1,000 people or more. And
Wouldn't that be nice?
Oh gosh. And
Yeah.
then we can pass the hat and make a little more.
Well, thank you. I hope you have the very best weekend, John Rothmann. I will see you on Wednesday on the Mark Thompson Show.
Oh, wait,
And of
wait.
course-
What's Wednesday? Wednesday is the day after New Hampshire.
Oh, we got a lot to talk
think
about.
Everybody ought to be making sure they tune in on Wednesday to the Mark Thompson program. I come on at 11:30. And if you need me sooner, just call me.
And of course, if you want to hear John Rothmann sooner, you can every day Around the Political World with John Rothmann. Just look for it online. It's a podcast, only 10 minutes a day, but you get your little daily dose of John Rothmann and his take on the world, and it's very worth it. Again, it's Around the Political World with John Rothmann, the podcast. Thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you for having me, and give Nikki my love.
I will do it. Okay, have a great
Bye.
weekend. Bye. I took myself out instead of you. Bye. All right, I'll get it right eventually. How about we do a little bit of news here on the show? Because I haven't yet, but I do want to thank some people for kicking in. As John Rothmann mentioned, we can't do this without you guys. So Spencer Jaffe, who is consistently a supporter of the show, you are very appreciated. Thank you for the $5 contribution today. Another someone who is consistently supporting us with lovely messages of encouragement, Beth Farmer. Thanks for bringing John for a great session. Yeah, Beth, thank you for your contribution as well. And I'm glad you enjoyed the interview or the session with him. It really is more of a session than an interview, right? And again, with Brian and your $18, thank you so much for supporting the show. I know that you didn't necessarily agree with what happened yesterday, but I like that we can do these things, that we can, I don't know, experiment, maybe widen the conversation, maybe make a mistake, maybe not. Whatever. I like that we can do it, we can try it, we can see how it goes, and that you'll still be here with us, supporting us. So I'm very grateful for that. Let me take and again, Around the Political World with John Rothmann is his daily 10-minute podcast. You can always find him there. Okay, let's do a little bit of news, and then we'll get right back into it. Let's see if I can make this happen by myself. And thank you for bearing with me.
Now, from around the world to up your street, the Nikki Medoro Show presents News Czar Kim McAllister.
This report is again sponsored by you, so thank you for any contributions to the show. The good news is that forecasters are expecting warmer weather soon for much of the country, but the good news, bad news stories. The bad news is forecasters expect the weather to get worse before it gets better. The Northwest can expect more freezing rain today, while another round of snow will hit the Midwest and the East Coast as well. Again, they have that whole Right to Life march thing happening. I think they're going to be marching in the snow. Winter weather may have played a role in avoiding a partial government shutdown. House Democrats and Republicans quickly approved a stopgap spending bill, as we mentioned earlier, so that they could get out of Washington ahead of a severe winter storm. President Biden is expected to sign the bill today that will keep the government funded until March 1st. We're just going to throw out little breadcrumbs, a few more. It's frustrating. Figure it out. All right. The Republican-led House Armed Services Committee wants Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin now to testify in February about his recent hospital stay. The committee wants to know why President Biden and top White House officials were not notified about his hospitalization until days later. Austin was hospitalized earlier this month for complications from a December surgery to treat prostate cancer. Consumer sentiment is at its highest level since July of 2021. The University of Michigan's early reading for January jumped 13%, and consumer sentiment has now risen nearly 60% above its all-time low in June of 2022. The survey noted increasing confidence among all age and all income groups that inflation has turned a corner. And maybe that will affect our election coming up. Madonna is being sued for tardiness. Uh-oh. Two fans who attended her December 13th show in Brooklyn have filed a breach of contract lawsuit against Madonna, Live Nation, and the Barclays Center because her show started more than 2 hours later than it was advertised. They say the late start and the late ending forced them to pay inflated surge prices for a ride share due to limited mass transportation options, and so they are suing. You got to be really mad, right? There is a new partnership that could help astronauts avoid some of the health problems that they face once they return to Earth. An East Central Florida vaccine development company called Vaccinity announced this week that it is partnering with the University of Central Florida to advance space medicine research. The two will use a state grant to find ways to prevent and mitigate muscle and bone wasting, which can affect astronauts who spend a long time in space. So interesting. Things we don't necessarily think about all the time. Guess what? The cost of a stamp is going up this weekend. Come Sunday, the United States Postal Service will increase the cost of a first-class forever U.S. postage stamp from the current 66 cents to 68 cents. The Postal Service says the increase will help provide much-needed revenue. So we don't think 2 cents is that big of a deal. And honestly, I'll do whatever we need to do in order to help preserve a post office. I think it's very important to have that. But they keep increasing things. You know, things go up and up and up. And right now it's 66 cents, then it's 68 cents, and then you turn around, it's $1. So I don't know. The Rolling Stones will head to the Big Easy to headline this year's New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival. And they will be joined by other rock legends, including Neil Young, Crazy Horse, Earth, Wind and Fire, the Beach Boys, the Foo Fighters, Heart, Bonnie Raitt, and George Thorogood. The New Orleans Jazz Fest features hundreds of bands over 2 4-day weekends from April 25th to May 5th. Sounds like a great time. Wow. Let's see. I was going to read another story for you guys. But maybe I won't. How about this? This story is crazy. It's truly shocking what people will buy. Lip balm flavors inspired by a basket of chicken wings have already sold out. These are those Burt's Bees. I think I have one in my makeup bag. Here's my favorite one. I like the peppermint. It's only sold every holiday season. Buy it for like $1 something, whatever. But it's a moisturizing lip balm, Burt's Bees, right? They have some new flavors, but you won't be able to find them because they sold out like this. Burt's Bees announced that it's teamed up with Hidden Valley Ranch to create a line of lip balms that features flavors of buffalo sauce, crunchy celery, fresh carrot, and Hidden Valley Ranch. Do you want your lips to taste like carrots or like ranch dressing or like buffalo sauce or celery? It'd be like I didn't finish my meal all day. The collaboration started after an April Fool's post in 2022 of ranch-flavored lip balm. This limited edition pack of 4 lip balms was launched on Wednesday. It is sold out. I was looking yesterday just to see if I could find it. Not that I wanted to buy it. I was looking for it to see, could you still get a hold of one if you wanted to? Maybe for a joke gift or what have you. The only one I could find available to purchase was on eBay for $100. So people took this 4-pack of lip balm that was, I don't know what, you pay $5 for it, for a pack of 4. And they put it on eBay because it's a limited edition and it sold out for $100, probably even more today. Wild. Again, this report is sponsored by you, which means that we do rely on you to help us fund the show. Please find us at thenikkimedoroshow.com. Again, it's thenikkimedoroshow.com. And that's where the Patreon link is and the PayPal link is and everything else. So I don't want to beat it to death, but there it is. And again, our thanks. All right, let's move forward. We have Tim Sika coming up in this hour to talk about movies in just 20 minutes. But until then, I wanted to talk to you about this story, or talk with you and get your opinion, see what you think about this. This story is out of the Sacramento-ish area, Northern California. There is a Yuba County woman who's being sentenced to state prison for this DUI. Her name is Clara DeLong, 24 years old, and she was drunk when she was involved in a car wreck on September 12th of 2023. Her truck hit a motorcycle and killed a 40-year-old man who was a husband and a father of 3. His name is Kenneth Glass, and he was riding the motorcycle. He died at the scene. She ran from the scene of the crash, was later found and arrested, and her blood alcohol content was 0.09. So that's just over the legal limit, but it was also an hour after the crash. So it had likely gone down. So she was probably more drunk when the accident happened. She faced multiple charges, including manslaughter, hit and run, driving under the influence. She was sentenced yesterday in Yuba County in a very unique way. Okay. Her sentencing happened inside of the Wheatland High School gymnasium in front of the entire student body of this high school, because they wanted students to see, this is what happens to you when you drink and drive. These are the consequences. You get behind the wheel of a car, you kill somebody, and you can spend, as she is going to be, 4 years. She's impact sentencing. She was sentenced to 4 years in prison. She'll probably be out in 2. All right. But this is described as impact sentencing. The Yuba County District Attorney's Office says it's unique and for the purpose of deterring drinking and driving in teens and young adults. So the question I have for you is this: is this a good idea? Or is this kind of like a barbaric public shaming in the town square? You know, should she be put in front of a room of hundreds of high schoolers to be humiliated? Or do we go for the greater good here and affect the kids that are watching? Maybe after they see this, they'll think, I remember that lady and I don't want to be like that lady. Maybe that works. I tend to err on the side of, listen, this horribly bad thing already happened. This man is already gone. If some good can come out of it, then it's to prevent and keep these kids from getting into a similar situation, right? But there's something a little weird about this, to do this in a high school gym where it seems like she's put on display for all. And I don't know if you're the, if I was the person who had committed the crime, I would likely be so full of remorse that this would be a way that I felt like I was giving back. But if you're the person who's done this, do you want to be sentenced in front of an entire school full of kids? I don't know. So I thought I'd get your opinion, see what you have to say about it. Deidre says, yeah, it might impact a kid. Absolutely. John writing, they'll probably give her a lighter sentence for agreeing to do it in front of the kids. I don't think they did. I don't think she got a lighter sentence. Maybe it'll be used to determine her early release date, that, she's cooperative, that, she went through this process. I don't know. Kim writes, Vicky, I am not worried about her feelings. She killed someone. True. I agree with you, Vicky. But we do have a duty and a way of doing things in this country that, despite your crime, we have, as they say, processes, protocols, and standards, right? We don't do cruel and unusual punishment. We don't do things that they did, they don't put your head in the what is it called? The lock the shackles and everything, so people can throw eggs at you as they walk by. Hey, maybe we should go back to that. I don't know. I don't know. Um, oh, it looks like, yeah, looks like we have some. See, this is what happens. I'm unable to police the chat as much, so sorry about that for letting that through. Let's see. Blue Spark writes, San Jose police have a mobile display of a mangled car to show kids. I think some kids were killed, not sure, but it does get your attention. Right. That happens at high schools around the country. If there's a horrible accident, they bring out the mangled wreckage of a car and they dump it right in front of the school on the high school lawn. So kids, as they come out of school, will have to walk right by it and see this is what happens. Now, that's different, though, than a public shaming or a humiliating of someone, right? And again, as has been mentioned, maybe we don't feel bad for her because she committed this horrible crime. 3 kids and a woman are going to have to do without the person they loved in this world. 3 kids don't have a dad now. There's a wife without a husband now because this girl got drunk and smacked into a motorcycle. Yeah, Gordon says it might be a good effect on the kids. James writing, I'm sure she had to volunteer for this. Seems like a way for her to begin to make amends in some small way. I would agree with that. I don't know if she had to volunteer for it. And if she did, then good on her. Absolutely. Yeah, so it sounds like everybody's really on board with this. Anything to keep this from happening again. And that's kind of where I land on this. Jim says, no, so no public caning or whipping, but can we not handle stares? Are Americans that weak? I hear you. Yeah. I don't know. Beth saying maybe she got a lighter sentence if it was a public public trial, it wasn't public trial, it was just a public sentencing. Yeah. I don't know, just give me truth if she got the choice. I would hope that she did. I don't know. All right. Let us move on to this story out of, I'll say Cal Poly, because that's where the crime happened. You remember this case of Kristen Smart? She was walking home from a party with a boy, a young man, and he's accused, oh, I don't know if he was found guilty, I think he was, of killing her. Kristen Smart is her name. This happened in 1996, and the family is now suing decades later. And here's what they say. Cal Poly was in the best position to prevent these tragedies from ever occurring, both the death of Kristen and the freedom her murderer enjoyed for almost 25 years. And Cal Poly, they say, is therefore responsible for allowing these tragedies to unfold. The lawsuit filed yesterday in the San Luis Obispo Superior Court on behalf of Smart's parents who live in Stockton, her brother, and her sister, who are also parties in the case. So her family, her parents and siblings, are suing the state university system, namely Cal Poly, because of her murder. They want a jury trial. They want negligence. They allege negligence, infliction of emotional distress. They allege wrongful death. They said that are saying that they didn't begin to understand the multitude of failings by Cal Poly until May of 2023, when the university president stepped forward and publicly apologized, saying that he recognized, or they recognized, things should have been done differently, and that the quote is, I personally wish that they had been done differently. Is that another one of these moments where maybe a university president steps forward and finally tries to make some semblance of things right, even though you can't bring somebody back, and say, we made mistakes here, wish we'd done it differently, and I apologize? Or the minute you apologize, you open yourself up to a lawsuit like this. Should you not have apologized then? I don't know. It's a pending legal matter, so Cal Poly is not commenting on this at all. The remains of Kristen Smart have still never been found, but Paul Flores, who was convicted of killing Smart in his dorm room, was sentenced on last March to 25 years to life. He was attacked in prison last year. His father was cleared of being an accessory after the fact for allegedly helping to conceal this whole crime. And here's what the lawsuit is alleging. Cal Poly, they say, did not pursue a missing persons case or interview the witnesses in a timely manner. Cal Poly did not seal the primary suspect's dorm room as a crime scene and did not allow it to be searched until 16 days after Kristen Smart disappeared. And Cal Poly did not act on previous reports about Paul Flores's threats, stalking, and other harassing behavior. And they say if Cal Poly had acted on all of those reports, done the investigation, apportionately disciplined the student, he would not have been on campus and therefore would not have been able to murder Kristen Smart. Flores, they say, would also have been prevented from assaulting and attacking countless other women in the years after he murdered Kristen, because he's accused, at least, if not more, of sexual assault in the years after her death. So they also say in this lawsuit, the family has endured decades of trauma and emotional distress by knowing the killer was free, that her body is still hidden, and that that killer could hurt other people. And I think they have a case. It's unfortunate that it was the apology that touched the case off. They probably could have filed this one years ago, but I think they're going to get a big payout. And I don't fault them. I don't fault them for suing. But it's sad that an apology has to be used in this way. Vicky writes, yes, it does sound like that Cal Poly contributed to that crime. Yeah. I mean, and here you have the president of that university apologizing and saying, we wish we would have done things differently. So, yeah, I think that, I guess he shouldn't have said that, or the university president shouldn't have said that. And that's sad. But to protect the finances of the university, you can't tell the truth. I don't know. I think they're going to get a big payout for this. Yeah. I left you guys in the chat. Grady, prison will deal with that asshat. Eric knew someone who was friends with her. Such a sad, sad story. And Calvin says, did the parents try to sue the parents of the killer because they helped cover up the crime? I don't think this is specifically against the university. Yeah. So anyway, I thought that was a very interesting story. And so many years later that the lawsuit should come now, right? Yeah. Talk 20 years later doesn't make things right. No, it doesn't make things right. Absolutely not. You would think, though, that this lawsuit would have come along much sooner, but no. In Oakland, of course, where we see crime after crime after crime, $20,000 worth of bonsai trees were stolen from a free volunteer-run garden. Come on. I mean, it's like taking toys from kids on Christmas. Right? People are putting their own time and their own money into trying to help beautify Oakland and make the community better. These valuable bonsai trees were stolen from the bonsai garden at Lake Merritt in Oakland in what's being called on the ABC7 website a bizarre burglary. The location is volunteer run, free admission kind of Japanese style garden. Surveillance images show the thieves went in at night on Wednesday at about little after 9 p.m. They got through 2 fences to get to these bonsai trees. The volunteers who run the bonsai garden at Lake Merritt, they are hoping that people will see this and that they will help. Somebody, they say, broke through the fence and stole 8 trees, and these trees are smaller in that they're able to be carried out through the fence. Empty platforms could be seen where those bonsai trees once stood. 8 trees might not sound like a lot, but they are trees that could be older than all of us, right? The very rare Hinoki cypress trees with a very large trunk, at least one of them. The tree was only 18 inches tall, but it had a girth on it of about 8 inches. It's estimated that Hinoki cypress tree is 100 years old. It has been stolen, its whereabouts now unknown, And it was the fourth time this bonsai garden at Lake Merritt has been hit in 4 years. This time, though, was the worst one. Volunteers tell ABC7 the thieves went through an interior fence, somehow got through separate fencing surrounding the gardens of Lake Merritt. The theft of these bonsai trees apparently becoming a real problem around the world. Nurseries in Southern California, Seattle, even Japan have all been hit. And it seems like, I don't know, people are getting a little more sophisticated about it, cutting the cameras when they get in. And then the trees just vanish very quickly. At least one of the trees, they couldn't pull out. It was too big and they left it by a fence. The rest of them, they got them. And either they're selling them online, they're selling them to businesses, and making money off of this. So the people that run the garden say it's so sad people can't respect something that everybody comes and enjoys, and they can just come to a very peaceful place. They're hoping Oakland police can do something about this. Good luck. They say that having the media talk about this and bring more attention to this, that hopefully it can be prevented, and that maybe someone who would have bought it won't, because they can see where it came from. But what a sad situation, where people give of their own time. They think these trees are worth $20,000. So it makes them a prime target, just sitting out there right near Lake Merritt. But yet another instance where someone's trying to do something good in the world and they just get slapped down. It's upsetting. It's upsetting to hear that. And I don't like it. If you could please click the like button, I would appreciate that too. It's free and it doesn't cost you anything, because that means it's free. And so we'd appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed to the Nikki Medoro show yet, please do that as well. As they say, click like and subscribe. And thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. Did you know that today, oh no, it's not today, it's tomorrow, is National Gift Card Day. So all those gift cards that you got for over the holiday season, for Christmas, for Hanukkah, for a birthday, whatever it is, this is your time. Check your wallet, because National Use Your Gift Card Day is Saturday, January 20th. Top Cashback is a website that finds more than 2/3 of Americans have unused or partially used gift cards just laying around collecting dust. The gift card holiday tomorrow encourages consumers to redeem those gift cards that they received over the holidays and treat themselves to something nice. This, according to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, a gift card cannot expire for up to 5 years from the date it was activated. And there are different laws about this in different states. And I don't think it can expire in California. Right? A gift card is just like cash. So if you would like to participate, you can get out there tomorrow and try to spend some of these gift cards you have. I have a gift card that is really old. The restaurant is still in business, but I don't even know if it's good anymore. And I'm kind of embarrassed to bring it in after all these years. But, money was spent on it. And so why not just go and cash it in and get all these gift cards used? Otherwise, they just kind of sit around and linger, right? You don't want that either. You got to get out there and use these things. This is a weird story out of Oklahoma. Kids dressed up as animals could be removed from Oklahoma public schools by animal control under a new bill. You're thinking, what in the ever-loving world? Yes. Apparently, what they're trying to do is hit at that whole, I'll call it a subculture, but it's the furries people who kind of have. Listen, if you're a furry, I'm sorry if I'm not understanding this correctly, but I understand it as kind of a maybe a sexual thing. Maybe that's what I think. I don't know. They're trying to take aim at furries, people who wear these costumes and they act like cats and dogs. The legislation would prevent anyone wearing animal outfits from participating in school curriculum or school activities. Similar bills like this have been tried and they have failed. It's the first to include the animal control provision, where animal control officers will come and take you away. Hey, if you want to act like an animal, then the animal control people are going to come get you. This is a bill being pushed by the Republicans in Oklahoma. It's so weird. I mean, really, how many furries are there at a school? I think the school administrator would come down on that pretty hard. But I think it's kind of a kink, right? Isn't it? So why you would take that to an elementary school, I don't know. I mean, maybe there are people that do this whole furry lifestyle that aren't trying to be sexual about it. I don't know. Don't necessarily want to know. But I think that's so weird that I mean, it seems kind of like a waste of time. Is it really that big of a problem that you need to enact legislation that children dressed up as animals can be removed from public schools in Oklahoma by animal control? What about Halloween? Does that get a pass? You could dress up like a kitty cat or whatever you want on Halloween, but no other day? Or was that not a part of it all? I don't know. I have to go to the chat. Can't wait to see what you guys have to say about this. That's what I think, John. Yes, I guess this is a big problem in Oklahoma. Really? So weird. Eric says, the Republicans hate anybody different. Gays, trans, furries, doesn't matter. Deidre says, yeah, I think it's a kink. I've accidentally been to FurCon in San Jose 3 times for my daughter's volleyball tournaments at the San Jose Convention Center. I would love that. Just for the people watching, right? Just because it's like, I just find a bench somewhere and just sit back and watch what happens. Man. Mindy says, I love it when children dress like fuzzy cats. Just Give Me Truth says, whatever happened to just being normal? Just on Halloween? No, all the time. I would think they'd get a pass on Halloween, right? I mean, kids dress up at school on Halloween. So I don't know. Karen is right on the money here. Says a lot about the state and its legislature. The leather guys are worse, says Spencer. I don't know if that's true. Can't cross-dress in Oklahoma, so furries are as close as you can be in public. Oh, I guess now you can't do that either. They don't want that. Is Mark a furry? He does have a cat fetish. No comment. No, I don't know. I don't know this word, Heather. No yipping in class? I don't know what that... Yeah, I don't know. You mean yipping? I don't know. Marilyn wants to know, it says, well, she was in the midst of a furry convention in Reno, and it was very weird. Crazy. I don't know what inspired it. Maybe one person showed up at a school, and so now we have to have legislation about it? I don't know. Blue Spark says San Jose just had the furry convention with something like 5,000 participants. Anchorage has a thing they call Furrundy, and they have outhouse races. Ooh, fun times for all. Why not? John says, yeah, more evidence that Oklahoma is the most boring state in the United States. I don't know. I just thought that was really funny. Yeah. Don't Google it, they say. Yeah, you might not want to Google that one. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'll bring it to Tim Sika. I know he's here to talk movies, but maybe I won't bring it to Tim Sika. We'll see. Well, first of all, I want to thank John Rothmann for coming on the show. I would like to thank Amurk for coming on yesterday. And I want to thank Tim Sika for hopping on with us today. Tim Sika, how are you?
Hi. What is it that you're not going to put before me here?
Weird story.
What?
It's this weird story out of Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Their state legislature has this new bill where kids dressed up as animals could be removed from public schools by animal control. They're trying to take aim at that whole subculture called the furries.
Right, the furries, yeah.
Furry suits and do whatever they do.
Yeah.
Apparently it's a problem in Oklahoma.
Really? What kind of problem? Why is it a problem? I mean,
I don't know, but
Yeah.
they say the legislation prevents anyone wearing animal outfits from participating in school curriculum or activities. And so what they want is if you show up at a school dressed up in a furry suit,
Mhm.
for the animal control people to come haul you out.
Well, I don't know. Come on. I mean, what do you think of that? That sounds kind of wacky to me.
The
I
whole
mean,
thing is wacky. Yeah.
yeah, but most news is all crazy stuff anyway. So what else is new? I mean,
That's right.
I'm not surprised. Yeah, that's a legitimate news story and that people are up in arms about it. Yeah,
I just think it's weird.
it is weird. Yeah, I agree with
Oh,
you. Yeah.
well, let's talk about movies because you have been busy, hard at work, watching all these movies and thoughtfully thinking about whether or not you're going to recommend them to us. So let's get on with the show. What do you have first up?
Okay, there's a film that opened today. It's
Okay.
probably the most high-profile studio movie. It's called ISS, and that's short for International Space Station. So this
Oh.
is an outer space suspense thriller. It's directed by Gabriella Copperthwaite. A lot of women involved in the making of this movie, which is, another good sign. A lot of women are making a lot of movies these days. I
Mhm.
mean, I would say last year at least 50% of the movies that I reviewed were directed by women. So that's great. Great progress. Anyway, this is one of those peril in outer space dramas, Kim. Think Gravity, Alien, Marooned, of that genre.
Right.
And for purposes of context here, okay, the ISS is the International Space Station, and it's a real thing. And in years past, it served as this symbol of U.S. and Russian collaboration during the Cold War. And its function now, as it was then, is that it's used primarily as this research facility where the crew, made up of American cosmonauts or American astronauts and Russian cosmonauts, makes advancements in medicine, technology, and in space exploration. So it's a research center. And okay, so the premise of this movie is that a crew of 6, 3 astronauts and 3 cosmonauts, 4 men, 2 women, are up in this outer space, research facility in deep space, the ISS, when they get this message from Earth that an act of war between Russia and the U.S. is taking place below.
Oh.
And one of the U.S. astronauts receives a message ordering him to take control by any means necessary of the ISS. So that's the premise.
That's an interesting premise.
It is. And what ensues is just about what you can imagine and what you'd expect, mistrust amongst the crew.
Sure.
There's this deception, paranoia, taking the side of your country. That sets the stage for this drama. And yeah, it sounds really interesting. And I guess, to be fair, this is an okay movie. Okay, it's got solid special effects. It's got a really good music score, a very good ensemble. Chris Messina, John Gallagher Jr., and the lead ensemble cast member would probably be Ariana DeBose, who won an Oscar last year playing Anita in Steven Spielberg's West Side Story. She's very, very good here. But I think it would have been a better movie if the characters were a little more fleshed out. It needed, in my opinion, to actually be a longer movie than what I saw, 2 hours instead of the 90+ minutes it is now.
Yeah.
It feels rushed. And to me, it felt weird, for one, that these characters already appeared tense before all the drama erupted. And I'm going, why are they so tense? What don't we know? They all seemed a little bit on edge too emotionally. That was weird because, I don't know, unlike the astronauts in 2001, A Space Odyssey, which is how I always pictured astronauts would act under pressure, these guys and these gals seemed like they hadn't been trained. I don't know. It's weird. And much of the script really requires the audience to engage in deep suspension of belief. Basic chunks of it are, to be blunt, unbelievable and contrived, although the cast tends to keep it on track and fool you into believing that all of what you're watching is credible and could conceivably happen. So yeah, for me, it was as though it were in a rush to get to all the drama of the piece, the mistrust and the deception that plays out amongst the crew. It does end on a thoughtful note, I'll say, which is to its credit. I suppose that's its biggest achievement as a movie. But again, I've been saying this a lot about movies these days. A lot of the movies I've been watching, like this one, it's not bad. You could do worse, but it's also less than great, let's just say. But sci-fi buffs, outer space movie junkies, they might find enough here to satisfy them.
It's a disappointment because when you talked about the plot of it, the whole point of it, it's hard to believe no one has thought of this yet or have made a movie about this yet. And so it could have been so good.
Yeah, well, in that respect, it is interesting. It's different, and so it is. Yeah, I don't know what I to me it just felt like a whole section was missing.
Right.
Like So and maybe who knows why if other scenes were filmed and deleted. I don't know, but I don't think it's bad, and I think it is worth seeing if you think the premise is interesting. You should check it out. Yeah, it opens in theaters today. Yeah.
Okay. The Crime Is Mine.
Yes. Now this one, The Crime Is Mine, is
I don't think
good.
Is this the right poster? I don't know if this is the right one.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
okay.
It's written and directed by Francois Ozon. It's in French, and that's why you weren't sure. I think that poster, the poster there is in French. Yeah. And anyway, it's in English subtitles, and it's a combination comedy satire. It's set in the 1930s. It's about a down on her luck actress whose actual talent we wonder about throughout the movie. Like, is this woman really a good actress? Anyway, she gets fame and notoriety after being acquitted of a murder that she never committed in the first place for self-defense. And this movie is absolutely charming. It's light, it's airy, it's breezy, it's comic, it's silly, it's stylish, it's broadly played for laughs, but never overdone. And it has this like 1950s Technicolor look about it, which is really appealing. And they have the movie's got retro film titles. It's based on a 1934 play that I never even heard of, which apparently has been previously adapted into 2 American films. The screwball comedy True Confession that starred Fred McMurray. I think that came out in the 30s. And then there was a 1946 Betty Hutton comedy called Cross My Heart, which I have seen, but I don't see the resemblance. But anyway, this movie, The Crime Is Mine, it's a stylish comic delight, and really also a kind of feminist farce that's this robust celebration of sisterhood, really, with delightful performances. A standout one coming from Isabelle Huppert, who plays a parody of a Sarah Bernhardt type of stage actress. She's imperiously hilarious, and she delivers this Oscar-worthy comic turn. And the film's peppered with witty lines, laugh out loud moments. It kind of reminded me of a cross between the 1942 comedy Roxy Hart and Blake Edwards's comedy musical Victor Victoria. That's what this movie reminded me about, although because it's about mistaken identities and fooling its audience and stuff, but it's a sparkly, intelligent, and fun entertainment. I just had a blast.
Oh, wow.
I don't know what I was expecting, but what I got was just such fun.
Is it in subtitles?
It's in subtitles, but you forget that it's in subtitles.
Yeah.
You get so immersed in it.
Get sucked into the story.
And it's terrific. Yeah. It's called The Crime Is Mine, and it opens in theaters today.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. What do we have next? This is what? The Cult Killer.
Cult Killer. Oh. Yeah, we go from sparkly entertainment here to serial killer unsavoriness. Cult Killer. The title would imply like a low-rent slasher movie, but this movie is a bit more than that. It kind of aspires to be a sort of Silence of the Lambs 7 hybrid. It doesn't quite reach the heights of either of those 2 movies, but on its own, it reasonably delivers. It's basically about a young female recovering alcoholic, actually. She's a private investigator played by Alice Eve. And that's her in that picture. No, actually, that's the cult killer in the poster. Anyway, this woman sets out to pursue the killer of her male mentor, and in the process forms this kind of twisted alliance with the serial killer, the cult killer of the title. Who's that lady? No, wait a minute. No, that's not the cult killer. No, that is the private investigator. It's small on my screen. Anyway, and this is a serial killer drama centered around, the unsavory world of sex trafficking, basically sexual imprisonment and severe female sexual abuse.
Yikes.
I kept thinking of Jesus. If Jeffrey Epstein had been even more depraved, this is how his story might have looked, because it's about billionaires who have so much money that the stuff that they get away with, oh my God. And even if they're caught, they somehow can get away with it.
Right.
And I don't suppose this is any spoiler because we do find out about it soon enough, and savvy viewers will know right away before the movie tells you. But the cult killer is actually the victim of an extremely wealthy sex cult. So it's also a kind of ultimate female revenge thriller too. And it's pretty out there. It's sleazy. It's very slick. It's very polished, like cheese.
Mhm.
a tad, well, maybe more than a tad, maybe a lot more than a tad improbable in a lot of respects. The more it charges along, the more like contrived it becomes, and it almost kind of knows how contrived it is. But the cast, I have to say, they're committed to the script. The star here is Antonio Banderas. He's in the poster there, which lends the story some considerable heft. So yeah, if it's about anything, it's about how the monster outside can become the monster inside if we let it. It's gnarly for sure, kind of trashy, but I did think it delivered the goods, and I recommend it to diehard fans of the serial killer genre. Others may want to stay clear of it though, because it is unsavory. Oh God,
Hard to watch.
Hard to watch, but done to this extent where they tell you more than they show, although they show you enough, but they don't show you enough to where you want to turn it off. They kind of keep you hooked into how the story is going to get resolved. But that's Cult Killer. It sounds like a really, really trashy movie, but there actually is something else more to the story.
I mean, I like a good thriller, but I also don't want to be like, I don't know, spend 2 hours living in grime.
Well, that's kind of a good description of a Cult Killer.
I don't know if I have the right poster for this next one, which is called in English "Fallen Leaves."
Yeah, Fallen Leaves. Yeah, that is. That's because this is another international movie. Fallen Leaves is a Finnish rom-com. Now, and when do you ever get to see those, right? A Finnish rom-com.
You would be surprised what you can find on Netflix.
I know. You'd be surprised with the kinds of movies they're making now. So many that just the movies we're talking about this week display such a diversity of subject matter and anyway, I think movies in that respect are healthier than ever. But this one is a Finnish rom-com. It's directed by the, how can I say, singular and distinctive Finnish filmmaker Aki Kaurismäki, whose name probably won't mean much to the average film goer, but to the cinephile, well, he or she will most likely know that name and will also immediately know whether they want to avail themselves of this movie. It's an offbeat, delightful, and weird little romantic comedy gem. So yeah, Fallen Leaves, appropriately titled. It's this beautifully constructed narrative and a tender, offbeat, and funny romantic comedy about a lonely man and a lonely woman, there in the poster there, who are basically trying to get together, right? But life circumstances just kind of keep getting in the way from that to happen. And that's really all you need to know about the plot. The pleasures of this movie are in its little human behavioral nuances and little bits of business and the relatable messiness of the story. I think anybody that's ever sort of tried to get a relationship going will laugh out loud at what these characters go through. But just a little caveat here: if you're new to Kaurismäki, the director's work, in order for you to enjoy this movie, you've really got to be on his wacky wavelength, because the pacing of this movie, for one, would only seem quote unquote natural if you were, say, under the influence of a recreational drug.
Oh.
I mean, that's kind of how it feels. In fact, I thought while I was watching this, I thought this would even be much more fun if I was high,
Oh my gosh,
watching
that's so funny.
And I happen to like Aki Kaurismäki's movies, but I have to be in the mood for them. But when I am, I always discover a kind of freshness and movie watching pleasure and a reminder of why I fell in love with movies in the first place.
Yeah.
So I recommend this movie. It's sweet, it's endearing, it's charming, and it makes you feel good.
It sounds like it's right up my alley.
Yeah, I think you'll like it. Yeah, I think it's not playing in theaters. I believe it begins streaming today on Mubi. MUBI is a streaming service. I don't know how many people have that, but yeah, it's on Mubi today.
I watched this series. It was about Christmas, finding a love to bring home to the family for Christmas,
Uh-huh.
or a date at least.
Uh-huh.
And this woman goes through these series of dates
Uh-huh.
and trying to find someone that's at least worthy enough of bringing home to
Yeah.
Christmas dinner, basically trying to find a boyfriend before Christmas. She's tired of sitting at the kids' table.
Uh-huh.
And it's all in Finnish, and it is hilarious. And
Uh-huh.
it's one of
Yeah.
those things where you're reading the subtitles and you're laughing along, and you finally
Yeah.
realize, and it does nothing to diminish how much fun you're having with the show. So
Right. Yeah.
I
know
like
people,
a good Finnish comedy.
Yeah, and sometimes I know people. A lot of people don't like to watch movies that have subtitles,
Right.
but you know, it's really. I don't know if you've ever seen a movie in subtitles and seen that same movie dubbed in English, but the dubbed in English version is usually weird. The
No.
mouth movements don't fit. It sounds like another
Yeah.
actor came in and
Agree.
overdubbed. So yeah, stick to the subtitles, folks.
Yeah, it loses something.
Yeah,
I
it does
think.
lose something.
So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
All right,
yeah.
let's move on to the next one, which is Origin.
Yeah, Origin. This, okay. You know, I hate to actually. Yeah, there's one other one. I don't know if you got the one
Oh.
I want to talk about. It's called Anselm.
Oh, I have that one too. Yes.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I was gonna. Well, let's talk about Origin. I hate doing this because of all the movies we're talking about today. In their own way, I think they're worth seeing. But if I had to play the game of, if you only had one to pick to see this week,
Right.
despite my reservations about the one we're about to talk about, which we'll get to here in a minute, it would probably have to be this one, Origin, it's called.
Okay.
Opens in theaters today. And what this is, it's written and directed by Ava DuVernay, who is parenthetically the most financially successful African-American female filmmaker of all time, which is saying a lot. But what this movie is, this is her latest, and it's a dramatization of the artistic journey author Isabel Wilkerson took when she wrote her excellent must-read New York Times bestseller, Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents, which argues this thesis that America today and throughout its history has been shaped by this hidden caste system that transcends race and class or other factors. And she links the caste systems of America, India, and Nazi Germany to illustrate this argument, this thesis. And the reason I say if you have to choose one movie, choose this one, it's because it's, if nothing else, it's eye-opening, very entertaining, but it's eye-opening and a true conversation starter as a movie. I think the material is just excellent, and DuVernay's adaptation is very good. I'm begrudgingly admitting that, and everything about this movie, cast, etc., is pretty top tier. I'm not a fan of Ava DuVernay's movies, even though I agree with her politics and I understand, I think, where she's coming from. She loves playing the race and gender card. She loves playing the victim, and she sometimes comes across as very patronizing in her films. A couple of times in this movie, I felt very patronized, like, okay, you know, anyway, that's my issue with her and her movies. But that said, I think that despite this movie Origin having many of the aforementioned characteristics I just mentioned, for the material alone, it has to be recommendable and worth seeing. I think it will open minds in terms of the way in which we view race in this country. The book's been around a lot, and I think she's been on talk shows and stuff, and the conversation's already started around this issue. She claims it's really not race that's the problem. She posits this thesis that it's a caste system, and she really convincingly links it to the caste systems in India and Nazi Germany. For one, Nazi Germany, there was a group of lawyers in Nazi Germany that based their Jewish annihilation policy on our Jim Crow laws that we had in this country.
Wow.
So you can say that in that sense, anyway. It's a very, very convincing argument that she makes, and I think this, like I said, I think the movie's going to open minds in terms of the way we see race in this country, and will undoubtedly draw people to her superb book, which I think everybody should read.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we have time to squeeze this one in.
Oh, real
And
quick.
it
Okay.
is
Yeah.
Anselm. Yeah.
Anselm, yeah, I went into this one skeptical, but I finished it an enthusiastic convert. Wim Wenders, the Wings of Desire director, he's the director here. And this is a documentary about German painter, artist, and sculptor Anselm Kiefer. And I said I went into it skeptical because it starts out and it plays more like an art installation piece than an actual movie or documentary film. But boy, after I got over my initial bias, and 10 minutes later, did this movie totally overtake and overwhelm me with its power and majesty and stunning beauty. It was shot and designed, Kim, and meant to be seen in 3D. I saw it in 2D and I was still blown away, but I recommend folks dash to the Roxy Theater in San Francisco where it opens today and see it there. And it's how I would describe it is it's this immersive cinematic presentation that focuses on German artist Anselm Kiefer, whose work is steeped in myth and history and confrontation with the past, which is why he's considered so controversial. He forces people to kind of look at things that maybe they don't even want to remember even happened, like the Holocaust.
Sure.
And Kiefer is shown on screen. He's shown at work. He's heard ruminating over his colleagues and other German poets and philosophers who've inspired his work, like Jewish poet Paul Celan, whose family perished in the Holocaust. There's also archival footage of Kiefer, and the film shows not only his works, which are very large scale and vast in scope and size, perfect to showcase on a movie screen, but also how his art evolved over the years. This is a movie you have to see in the theater without any interruptions, watching it straight through. And I know this sounds like hyperbole, but this movie has this effect, at least it did for me, of altering your molecular structure. It's that powerful. It's artful, and it just masterfully achieves this aim. It claims, I think it achieves its aim of blurring the boundary between film and painting. So see it in the theater. It's at the Roxy Theater exclusively in San Francisco, and prepare to be dazzled.
I have to put my check mark by that. Okay. So your movies today, ISS, you said it's okay. Are you recommending it?
Yeah, I'm recommending it. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, gotta get over myself sometimes.
The Crime Is Mine, you said it's a stylish comic delight. You recommend it.
Yes.
The Cult Killer, you called it sleazy, polished, with cheese, gnarly. You said you'll recommend it for people who like these kind of movies that, might be a little gritty, right?
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
Fallen Leaves, you said it's an offbeat, delightful gem. You recommend it.
Yeah.
Origin, you say if there's one movie to see this week, this is going to be it.
Yep.
It's eye-opening and it will open minds.
Yes.
And Anselm, you say this documentary about an artist is stunningly beautiful. It will alter your molecular structure, and you recommend.
Wow. You know what? The minute I'm in search of a press agent, I'm going to offer you the job.
All right. Well, just recapping it for everybody. Awesome. Yeah. Tim Sika, what a great bank of movies you presented today. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Kim. Always enjoy talking to you, and hopefully we can talk again next week.
We'll do it next week. Thanks,
okay,
Tim.
All right. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks
Bye.
for that. Yay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this ends the Nikki Medoro show. What a great bunch of movies. I think I'm gonna like that Fallen Leaves movie. That seems like the one for me, but Anselm, the way he talked about it, altering your molecular structure, I'm kind of down with that one as well. Thank you guys for being here, and thank you for the contributions to the show, including the latest one from Doug with a $5 super sticker. I'll go through them again with Brian and $18 and Beth and $19 and Spencer and $5. And thank you guys for that and for all the ways you contribute and participate. Please click the like button on the way out. On Monday, Nikki will not be here. I will be. I'll hope you join in the conversation again. And thank you for doing that today with me as well. Join me next on The Mark Thompson Show, Friday Fabulous Florida. Michael Schur will be along. And also, we'll talk to Michael Snyder, the Culture Blaster, about what he thinks about movies. I always love to compare those reviews. So until then, have a great weekend. And hopefully I'll see you on the Mark Thompson Show in just a moment. Bye, everybody.
Nikki, you're all so awesome. You're proud, like a beautiful blossom. You're also the best. I really can't rest. You're also awesome.
Wow. Okay.
Nikki, you're oh so awesome. You sprout like a beautiful blossom.